Most nurses are revealing that there was no set system in place when Thomas Eric Duncan arrived in the emergency room. Now, according to a nurses union statement, Duncan was left in an open area for hours, and healthcare workers treated him without proper protective gear. Now, members of National Nurses United held a conference call with reporters today demanding that action be taken to protect the healthcare workers that are fighting on the front lines of Ebola.
This is outrageous that this is our responsibility. This is the responsibility of our elected officials to actually protect this nation and to protect the first line of defense. So what we've done is to draft a letter to the president, and we've sent it. And we're sending it to the governors of the state and to the congressional caucus. We're sending it to Congress. We're sending it to the president. We're sending it to the governor. We'll send it to anyone who will listen. And we're asking the president of the United States to invoke his executive authority to protect the nurses and other healthcare workers in the country.
All right, here now to respond is our panel of medical experts. Former U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Richard Carmona is with us, and former New York Lieutenant Governor and Chairman of the Committee to Reduce Infection Deaths is Betsy McCaughey. Betsy, if you listen to what Roseanne DeMoro of this nurses union is saying here, she said that there were no protocols. Quote, those protocols were not in place anywhere in the United States as far as we can tell. We are deeply alarmed. And then she said the nurses strongly feel unsupported, unprepared, lied to, and deserted to handle the situation on their own.
Lied to, for sure. And you heard the President of the United States earlier tonight lying to the American people again, repeating the lies that the head of the CDC, now the Centers for Denial and Confusion, has told to the American people for many months now. The President said he hugged the nurses at Emory University after they treated an Ebola patient. Well, Emory University nurses had much more equipment and much more training than
so they were better prepared.
Inadequate protocols that the CDC misleadingly sent hospitals around the country.
The President said it early, in the unlikely event it gets here, he said the chances are low for an outbreak. And then, of course, the head of the CDC, Dr. Frieden, he went out there and said, oh, you don't need a special room, or you just need a private room with a private bathroom.
And listen to the weasel words both of them used. Frieden said early on, there won't be a wide spread. He said a spread will not be likely, right? And tonight, the President said, well, there may be more cases, but it won't spread widely. Well, what do they mean by that weasel word, widely? How many deaths are acceptable? 1, 2, 10? It's unacceptable for Americans to die from Ebola.
Dr. Carmona, when you listen to what the nurses and the nurses union, they feel, I'll use their words, unsupported, unprepared, lied to, and deserted, and told to fend for themselves. But yet the CDC director and the President said just the opposite.
Sean, I am deeply concerned, not only as a physician and a Surgeon General, but I'm also a registered nurse. And I know that nurses are pretty much the barometer of all of our health systems because they're by the bedside 7/24. And when nurses make these kind of allegations, we have to take them very seriously, conduct an investigation immediately, and cease any activity that's going to place any of our healthcare providers at risk until we have the answers.
You know, the CDC director actually said there's nothing particularly special about the isolation of an Ebola patient.
Total lie.
That was
total lie.
That was October.
Treating an Ebola patient is so perilous, right, that hundreds of doctors and nurses in Africa have died attempting to do so. Not just doctors and nurses who are inadequate.
Doctors Without Borders have lost, what, 9
so
16
far.
are infected.
Some of the top epidemiologists on that continent, heads of hospitals in major cities, have died from Ebola. It wasn't because they lacked equipment or training.
Here's the question. Should Dr. Frieden be fired?
Absolutely. He should be fired. And when he first offered these false assurances to the United States, he knew they were a lie, because how can hospitals in the United States that cannot stop the spread of staph and C. diff and other common infections that kill 75,000 people a year in our hospitals, how could they possibly control Ebola?
Dr. Carmona, look, I don't think he has any credibility. He can't be a credible spokesman on this issue any longer. He's been so wrong, and as recently as October 5th.
Well, Sean, here's the thing that I'm most concerned with as a Surgeon General. There was an assumption that all the work we did in the last decade regarding preparedness after 9/11, which included biopreparedness for all of these agents that we are running into today, that in fact the hospitals were trained and were practicing and doing all of these scenarios that they were supposed to do. if this major hospital is having these problems, then it is really incumbent upon us to not assume that for any other hospital, and we have to do a very quick assessment to make sure that the integrity of our systems that we set up over many years is in fact intact, because people will be at risk if not.
Guys, thank you both for being with us. We have a lot more on the CDC coming up on the program tonight, and Ebola. Members of the Obama White House, they're taking heat for downplaying this threat from the very beginning, all while the left is trying to politicize this and blame it on Republicans. We'll check in with the architect on the politicizing of this. We'll get his reaction. But first,